Hi, thanks for joining us. I'm Jasmine Clark, and this is the Suburban Women Problem, a weekly podcast from Red, Wine, and Blue. It's pretty obvious the GOP has a quote, suburban women problem, and we're here to talk about it. You can learn more at pod.redwine.blue, and you can listen to the full pod by searching for the Suburban Women Problem wherever you get your podcasts. This week, we're talking to Gaby Goldstein, the co founder of Sister District. So, I just want to say I'm so excited to have you on, Gaby, because I've known you for a while now because Sister District has been absolutely instrumental in the ability for me to get elected and stay elected and get reelected. Just the abundance of resources and the abundance of support that you all provide to candidates has been amazing. And so I'm so excited to have you here. And I can't wait to just tell the world about Sister District because I sing its praises all the time.
Well, thank you so much, Jasmine. It is such a pleasure to be with you today, and it's always a pleasure to see your face and to be in space together. It is, you are the reason why we do this work, right? And I'm excited to talk about Sister District and all the rest, but just really grateful to you for having me on, and honestly for everything you do in the legislature and outside of it. You are a treasure.
I love it. Oh, thank you so much. All right. So let's just start at the beginning. I think this is a great place to start. So, Sister District, what is it and what inspired you to found this organization?
Yeah, I can't believe this year is 7 years since we started. I know it grew from an idea on a Facebook thread among a bunch of strangers, women, lawyers, to what we are now, which is a community of over 70,000 volunteers across the country, organized into local teams, helping elect and support incredible progressive state legislators. So we started this organization back in late 16 because we saw a gap in organizing capacity and resources going to great progressive folks running and serving at the state legislative level. I know that you all know this so well. Democrats and progressives are tardy to the party when it comes
Just
to
a little
paying
bit.
attention. The Real Housewives of Atlanta, right?
All right.
When it comes to paying attention to this level of government, the Republicans have been at this game for decades, for generations, really weaponizing state legislatures for their own regressive policy goals. And we really saw this gap and this opportunity where we could make a really big impact on these overlooked seats, right? State legislatures are our policy pipeline, they are our leadership pipeline. They are absolutely critical for fair districts and voting rights, abortion access, all the things that I'm sure we'll talk about. So that was really the impetus to start the organization. And today we have two parts of the org. We have the electoral part where we endorse amazing candidates like you and help them win. And then we have an infrastructure building side of the organization where we strengthen the candidate pipeline and work with lawmakers once they're elected in our Purple District Network, which I'm so proud that you're a member of as well. And really also focused on shifting the narrative for the public and broadening everybody's imagination about the power of states. So, I can't believe it's been 7 years. The work is more important than ever. We've got this revanchist Supreme Court that it continues to turn our civil rights and liberties back to states, right? From Dobbs to the environment to redistricting. We continue to have Republican legislatures, including in Georgia, right, that are rigging the rules through
Oh, yeah.
gerrymandering and voter suppression. And as you know this better than anyone, introducing and passing laws that are so far out of step with what voters want. So, the work is more important than ever. And the last thing I'd say there is that we can't just be against things, right? We have to
Right.
be for things. And I think there's so many examples of our blue states that are showing us what's possible. We've got this incredible new trifecta in Michigan that's
Oh, yes.
repealed right to work and, passing red flag laws. We've got California establishing a very generously funded public abortion fund, all the rest. So, in addition to highlighting all the terrible stuff coming out of conservative controlled states, I think it's really important that we also have a positive vision of what our states can do for us. And I think there's so many great examples out there.
I love that. It's something for everyone. It's like if you live in a blue state, let's talk about what we can do in the places where we're in power. If you live in a red state, let's talk about how we can get good people in seats so that we can start changing the tide and, really pushing things forward in the right direction. And so I know you, like I said, you all supported my campaign, and I know you also, as a part of your mission, you also think that it's very important to support diverse progressive candidates. So, can you tell our listeners why the diversity part is so important?
Yeah, I mean, it's critical. Having diverse represent first of all, our legislatures, and I'm sure Georgia is no exception. They are run by design by old white men, old white lawyers, right, who can afford to have part time jobs in the legislature, who can afford to take months off of work magically, as though we can just
Right.
magically take months off to serve in the legislature. And so we have these bodies all across the country that do not at all reflect the diversity of our communities and the districts, even where folks serve. And so it's absolutely critical that we turn that around. Not because checking diversity is just a box to check, but it results in policy agendas and leadership styles that better reflect the actual diversity of our country, our cities, our districts. And a great example is Nevada, the Nevada state legislature, the first legislature in the country to have majority women. And what did they do? They ended up passing an equal pay law, right? They started passing legislation that actually reflected the interests of women, right? Another example is in Virginia, one of our incredible alums and now running for state senate, Danica Rome, who passed legislation eliminating the gay panic defense, which was still a thing in Virginia until a couple of years ago, right? Danica is the first out trans legislator in Virginia. And so, there's two types of representation. I think it's really important to remember: descriptive and substantive, right? Descriptive is just representatives have similar
Right.
backgrounds, right? Like women. But substantive representation means that lawmakers are actually focused on issues of a particular group. Both are great, right? I'm not
Yes.
saying, but it's reductive to think of women as a monolith or people of color as a monolith. And so having the substantive representation that we want means focusing on electing and supporting lawmakers who bring their backgrounds and experiences to bear for progressive policies. Not just any policies, but really the policies that reflect the needs of their communities. So I think it's incredibly important to focus not just on increasing numerical representation, which of course we need to do, but also substantive representation, making sure that folks really have progressive values and policies that they're working towards, because it makes all of our lives better.
And the great thing about that mission, again, it's not just about getting a woman in there. It's not just about getting a person of color in there. It's about what that woman or what that person of color is bringing to the table and the policies that they are pushing for or championing. And the beauty of that is that a lot of the policies that these progressive candidates put up are policies that help everyone. Yes, women may want them, but guess what? everyone is going to be better off if we have this policy. And so for so long, we've had all these policies out there that really only advantage a very small sector of our population, with the idea that if that small sector of our population is happy, then they will share their wealth with the rest of us. And so we just got to keep them happy. And so, and the people making the decisions were in that sector or had a foot in that sector. And so to have all these different perspectives, to have the mom, to have the trans legislator, and by the way, we love Danica on the show. I had a chance to interview her before. To have the LGBTQ representation, to have the Black woman, to have, all of these perspectives, mothers, different backgrounds outside of just lawyers and business owners. All of those things bring something to the table that acknowledge that there are more people in society than just the top 1%. And the rest of us, when you make policy that caters to the rest of us, you really are making policy for everyone. And so I love that so much. And so I want to pivot a little bit. You recently wrote in an op-ed that, quote, as cities become bluer and our state legislatures grow ever more polarized, the outcome of this politicized game will define nothing short of our lives and our futures. So super powerful. I would love if you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. And I mean, you're in Georgia, so you know better than any of us
Oh, yeah.
what we're talking about here when we talk about preemption, right? So this was an article that my colleague Legia Gong, who's at Local Progress, and I wrote at the anniversary of the Dobbs decision a couple months ago, highlighting how red state legislatures are doing more than just banning abortion at the state level. They're actually preempting blue cities' efforts to protect and expand abortion. So
Right.
it's about abortion, but it's a much larger issue, preemption, and we'll talk about that, right? So we know that Republicans, one of their favorite tricks is to ban things at the state level that they don't agree with, right? Like
Yep.
abortion. But in addition to that, they've got this new trick, one weird trick that is really that they're being quite aggressive about. That really stops blue cities from being able to use their own authority to pursue the policies that their constituents want, that people want. And so that they do that through preemption, which is a legal doctrine that allows a higher level of government, like a state legislature, to essentially tell a lower level of government, like a city, that they just can't do something. And there's really a huge trend right now of Republican controlled state legislatures using preemption to stop local governments from enacting progressive policies. And so it's abortion. It's not just abortion. It's raising minimum wage. It's
Housing.
requiring
Yeah.
employers to provide sick leave, banning plastic bags. I mean, you name it. Republican controlled state legislatures are telling cities, which are increasingly blue, right, increasingly progressive, that they just can't set their own policies on these really important issues. And these are often bills that are cut and paste ALEC legislation. You probably
Yep.
are more familiar than most with the American Legislative Exchange Council's bill mill for Republicans that they use to pass their get their national agenda passed through our states. And they're using preemption as one of these tools. And I'm sure you can speak to what happened in Georgia around preemption just this past year, but it's a huge problem.
Yeah, I will never forget being in the well or not, I wasn't in the well. I would never forget one of my colleagues being in the well, and it was a local preemption bill. It was actually a preemption bill that said that local cities were not allowed to limit the type of utilities that people could use. And so, I guess there was a thing where a city wanted to say that all new builds needed to have, this certain type of utility as a way of addressing climate change in their own small way. and there was a bill to preempt that. And I remember um, one of my colleagues, my Republican colleagues, getting in the well of the House and basically saying, I'm all for local control until the locals get out of control.
Oh,
And it was a jaw drop moment because I have always been told that the Republicans were the party of small government. The Republicans were the party of local government. The Republicans were the party of home rule. And it was the big bad Democrats that you needed to worry about that were going to try to grow the size of government or tell locals what they can and can't do. But my experience, I've been in the Georgia state legislature since 2019. That's when I was sworn in. My experience has been the exact opposite. You have the Democrats fighting for local control and the Republicans doing all of the preempting. And it's, to your point, it's because most of our larger cities that are, making these impacts or wanting to make progressive impacts, they are also the ones that are voting blue. And we are in big ruby red, or I wouldn't say necessarily ruby red anymore, maybe purple Georgia right now, but we do have a Republican trifecta at the state level. And so this is their way of kind of smacking down any progress that local cities are trying to lift up, in their own way. So you are absolutely right. Preemption is something that I don't think a lot of people talk about or even know about, but it's so important because these are the tactics. These are the death by a thousand cuts that Republicans get away with to really try to dismantle any good policy.
totally. And, I mean, it's just as you said, our cities are becoming more diverse, they're becoming younger, and they have a more progressive voting base. And
Mm-hmm.
so, of course, Republican controlled legislatures are going to try to do what they can to curtail the power of our increasingly progressive cities. And the other thing is, I think it's really important for folks to remember that this sort of anti-democratic measure is often really does seek to suppress Black voters' voices,
It
right?
does.
And
Yeah.
it can be traced right back to white supremacist backlash to Reconstruction. And it's no surprise that the South is the hotbed for preemption. Like
Yep.
it has been shown to be a tactic that is much more prevalent in the South than in the rest of the country. And when you talk about abortion, these sorts of preemptive laws have a disproportionate impact by race, by place, by income, all the rest. And so, it is all connected, and really, really important for folks to realize that, your city council can be as blue as you want.
Right.
But if your legislature is red, it increasingly doesn't matter, because that legislature is going to swat down what your city does, regardless of how blue it is. And so that makes our mission of building power in state legislatures really important. There's no workaround when it comes to preemption.
I love that you keep circling back to just how important state legislatures are. A lot of people vote in presidential elections, but they don't necessarily vote in midterms because they don't really think about them as much. When we were in school and we were taught about elections, we were taught they were every 4 years instead of pretty much every year, especially if you live in a city. You pretty much have an election all the time, every year, around the same time of the year. But so there are a lot of people who just don't understand. And so they're like, oh, I voted for president. I did my part. But no, whether it's local government or federal policy, state legislatures really are what I like to think of as like the volume button. They are really the ones that are turning the volume up or turning the volume down on good or bad policy. And, a lot of people don't even know we exist. I know it sounds crazy, but there are a lot of people that just don't even know there's this whole level of government that's out there. All right, Gabby. So it's been so great talking to you. I could go on and on over so many topics, and I know you are such a wealth of knowledge. But we're going to wrap up soon. But before we go, we always like to ask our guests some rapid fire questions. First question: if you had any other job other than being in politics, what would it be?
Well, before I worked in politics, I was a bioethics lawyer. So,
Oh, fun.
yeah. So I've always been really, really interested in bioethics and making sure that people know how to consent to new treatments and drugs and devices and all the rest. And so that's health policy is a passion of mine. And so probably go back or probably be working in that space still.
I love that. I'm actually at teaching health policy, and it's one of my favorite things to teach. And you're right. And I love talking to my students about bioethics. It always makes for great debates and conversations in class. All right, next question. What's your favorite TV show from the 90s?
The X-Files. And as a
Oh, that was a good one.
Yes, and as a woman in STEM, Dr. Clark, I think we all have to acknowledge the Scully effect and how special it was to have a woman scientist on a show like that. Really encouraged a lot of young girls, and my own interests in bioethics came from being a fan of the X Files when I was a kid. So really a huge show.
It was a great show. It was like slightly scary, but not quite like it wasn't like scary, but it had like a little mystery and suspense and thrill. And as you said, rock star female scientist.
Yes.
Love it. All right. So next question. Actually, our last question. What's one of your favorite sister district success stories?
Oh my gosh, how do you even choose? I'll just say one, which is a perennial favorite, Mallory McMorrow, who is a state senator in Michigan,
We
and
love her.
she's so incredible. I'll never forget the first time I talked to her. She was just thinking about running, and in 2018, flipped her seat and has gone on to just not just the work in her own legislature, which has been incredible. And we talked a little bit about all the amazing things Michigan has been able to do with their trifecta, but she's really used her platform and continues to use it to talk about state legislatures and how important state leg is. Any chance she gets in the media, and she gets a lot of chances because she went viral a couple of years ago with a floor speech that was just absolutely incredible. I mean,
Oh, I
millions and
remember.
millions, absolutely
Oh, yeah.
incredible. But every chance she gets, she talks about the importance of states. And I'm so grateful to her for her work in the legislature and hyping up our states, because we really need advocates at that big stage level to talk about how important states are. So that's a favorite. She's a beloved alum, as are you, of course, and really excited to see where she goes too.
Me too. I see you, she has a very bright future ahead of her, and I love her. She's one of my favorite legislators across the country. And so, with that, Gabby, I just want to thank you so much for joining us on the Suburban Women Problem.
Thank you so much.
The Suburban Women Problem was created by Red, Wine, and Blue. Our producer and editor is Amy Thorstensen, and our project manager is Lindsay Quist. For more information about upcoming events and trainings, or to learn more about Red, Wine, and Blue, follow us on social media or at www.redwine.blue.